Hi guys and welcome to the video. So today we're going to talk a bit about investing. I'm going to talk to you guys about what I do with my money and why I do basically what I do. And hopefully that'll be helpful for you all. So if you take some value from this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, thingamajig above. So let's get into it. Now investing is something that not a lot of people talk about in terms of in day-to-day life. Money isn't something that a lot of people talk about. It's something that I definitely haven't been taught about from school. The main sort of learning I've got about money is from my parents, from my mom really, around budgeting. Investing was never something to me that I ever understood, ever thought was accessible for me. Not up until about 3-4 months ago.
When I started sort of doing more research into it, and specifically looking at things like Ali Abdal's videos, I've done stuff around obviously Graham Stephan's videos, listened to talks from John Bogle, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett of course.
Read books around sort of the psychology of money and different sort of areas of research to try and educate myself really. It has to be, I think finances, it has to be a self-education, because really in the education system currently, it isn't something that's taught. So what this video is about is basically to explain why I invest my money, spare money the way I do, and hopefully to spread some value to you guys. I've had friends and family talk to me about why I do what I do in terms of my investing approach. So this is also to help them understand it a bit more. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, so this is all just literally me putting out there what I do with my money. You can take what you want from it, you can just discard it, whatever you want to do. It's just me telling you, based on the research that I've done, this is what I do with my money. I've only been doing it for the past 3 months. I'm fairly recent to the investing game, so it's really a beginner's guide for beginners really to invest in. But I think that can sometimes be helpful. I think being new to the scene in terms of this investing and financial management and financial independence and all of this type of thing can be helpful in trying to explain some of the key concepts, because people that are more experienced might explain things not in as helpful a way. Or that's what I found anyway. I've had to do a lot of Googling to try and find out about different things. What is investing? So investing comes in many forms. The main part that I'm going to talk about is through stocks and shares. But investing essentially is putting your money into an asset with the aim of generating income over time. So it's putting money, say for example in real estate, a lot of people invest in real estate, putting money in a house knowing that that house will probably go up in value, so it'll appreciate in value, and then you'll also get money from rent. So it's investing money into an asset, so then in that case it's the house, to generate income over time. So bonds. A bond is a fixed income instrument that represents a loan made by an investor to a borrower. So the borrower is usually something like a corporation or government. It can be thought of as an IOU, so between the lender and the borrower. That includes details of the loans and its repayments. So essentially, a bond is someone saying, I need some money, you lending them money and then paying you the money back with interest. That's essentially what a bond is. This is often what's used when, say, governments need to find money for whatever it might be, whether it be a COVID pandemic or housing. You might buy government bonds and the government will pay you back with interest on the money that you've lent them. Stocks and shares. So the term stocks should be used when discussing ownership of companies in general, while shares, for example, is used to describe ownership of a specific company. Essentially, you own a small entitlement to a business's growth and dividends, so that you can benefit from the dividends paid out or appreciation in value of the company. So you might think about Apple, for example. If you bought Apple back in, 2010, you might look at, so it's increased in value, the actual company, but also the company, because they've made more money, they'll pay you back money in dividends. So stocks and shares can make you money in 2 ways. One is sort of appreciation of the value of the stock, and 2, in dividends. There are also different types of investing. So those are the different things you can invest in, but there's also different types of investing. I'm going to talk a bit about passive and active investing. So passive investing is when essentially you put money in something and literally just leave it to appreciate in value over time. You essentially just passive in the sense that you don't really touch it. You don't need to put your time into it for it to make money for you. Active is much more different. It's the one that's sort of sexier. It's one that's often in the movies. You'll see people online posting photos of their day trades, etc., on Forex or whatever it might be, or on cryptocurrency with things like Bitcoin. It's where you put money into an asset, and as it goes up in value, you make more money, and you take the money out and then invest it into something else. or you might keep the money in it for a bit longer, or it's basically you put your time into it. You have to manage it, you have to monitor it to make sure you're making the best returns and trying to beat the market. Everyone doing active investing essentially is trying to beat the market. And what that means is you're trying to make more money than you would if you were to buy, say, for example, the S&P 500 and just buy shares in the top 500 companies in America. By beating the market, it means trying to pick the few stocks that you can that will outperform the market average for the year or for 10 years or whatever it might be. And this is incredibly difficult, which I'll come on to. I want to talk a bit about the risks involved in investing. If you're a riskier investor, so people that are riskier tend to be younger like myself, so they might put more money in stocks and shares rather than bonds. Bonds tend to fluctuate much less than stocks and shares. They still do fluctuate, but not as much. But that lack of fluctuation comes with a cost, because obviously it's high risk, high return. So if you put low risk, you'll then generally get lower return. But the good things about bonds is, as stocks and shares might, say, crash and the stock market might crash, bond value tends to go up. So if you're an older investor, what they tend to do is invest something like 50-50 in stocks and shares and bonds, or 60-40 or whatever, depending on your risk levels, to make sure that when there is crashes in the market, it doesn't affect you as much and your actual sort of portfolio is more stable. There are also different types of risk levels in terms of stocks and shares. So risk levels in terms of, say, active investing, where you're picking different stocks, it's actually, I mean, I've seen lots of statistics around this, but say around, I believe around 80% of people that actually invest in stocks and shares actively fail, I suppose, to outperform the market. And I think Warren Buffett did a bet with some of the top hedge fund managers over a 10-year period that they wouldn't be able to outperform the market, and he actually won. I think the bet was for something like $1 million. It goes to show that it's really difficult, even for people where it's their life to watch the stock market and try and beat the market. They even weren't able to actually beat the market. And this is one of the key reasons why I don't try and beat the market. One, as well as the fact I don't really have time to monitor everything, to take money out into one thing, and I don't have the expertise or the skill level, but also, as I've said, it's really difficult. So what I tend to do is I invest in an index fund. What is an index fund? Essentially, an index fund, usually, for example, it's managed by AI, where they'll invest different proportions of your money into different things. So it will diversify your portfolio, which is a key thing in stocks and shares. Because you never want to be invested in one specific thing, one specific stock, or one specific, I don't know, area, for example, tech or financial services or whatever it might be, because then if that sector, for example, has a crash or an issue arises like the housing market 2008 or the dot-com bubble or whatever it might be, then you are screwed. The more you diversify, the more sort of covered and safe as possible it is that you don't, I suppose, lose money in the long term. That's essentially the best way to put it. So index funds, what they essentially do is they invest small proportions of the money that you put in into different things. So the S&P 500 is what I invest into, and that essentially puts a certain proportion of the money that I put in into the top 500 companies in America. It puts the money in based on a proportion of what percentage of the market that company takes up. So for example, Apple might take up 5.3% of the US market in terms of their revenue. So what the AI and what the S&P 500 does, different sort of platforms have different systems for this, so it can vary a little bit. But say I do it on Vanguard as the platform that I use. So they'll invest 5.3% of whatever money that I put in to my S&P 500 index fund into Apple, and a small proportion into the rest of the 500 companies based on their proportion of the market that they take up. Why do I do this? Well, generally speaking, over the last 100 years, the stock market has always gone up. I'll show you a little demographic here. This is the S&P 500. So generally speaking, there has been dips. So you'll see different dips, for example, in 2020 with the COVID pandemic. You see the dot-com bubble, you see the 2008 financial crisis of the housing market and the credit crunch in the UK. So you'll see that it has little dips and bumps, but generally speaking, if sort of plotted a line, it would be continually going up. And the reason for that is because the US stock market has continued to expand as the global economy has continued to expand. We consume more, we buy more, we use more, and because of that, we spend more, and because of that, companies make more money and the investors then make more money too. So generally speaking, investing in the S&P 500 as an index fund, looking at the sort of growth is a good indicator of where it might go in the future. It's not the perfect indicator, and past performance isn't, as I say, where it will be in the future, but generally speaking, in stocks and shares, it's as safe as you're going to get, which of course it always comes with risk. So my investments. So I started investing 3 months ago with whatever income I could spare, which at the time was around £200 a month. I took into account things I spend on petrol, things I spend on my phone, my car. I'm saving also for a house, so I had to take all that into account, and I wanted to make sure, and this is something I emphasize for everyone else, is that the money that I invest, I would be able to survive okay if I lost, because this is money for me in the long term that I'm not going to touch for 20 odd, maybe 30 years. So it's important that this money is not something that it's like, if I invest this, then I'm going to, and I lose it, I'm screwed, or leveraging money and taking loans out to then invest, or any of that stuff. I'm not for any of that. I'm much more risk averse than that. You might be, but I'm much more risk averse than that. So for me, I put in £200 a month into the S&P 500 on the Vanguard platform. There are different approaches. Some people save as much as they can. So there's people using the FIRE approach, which is financial independence, retire early. And what they do is they scrimp and save as much as they can, put all of their money that they possibly can into blue collar stocks, which are less variable in terms of their returns. And so what they'll do is they'll try and scrimp and save while they're young, maybe not go out for meals, or not buy this, not buy that, so that then they can retire at the age of, I don't know, 40 or something, and retire early and live the life at that point, hopefully, that they want to, or they're happy living. But for me, that's not where I am. For me, I would like to save as much as I can, but I want to live fully while I'm young, while I'm able-bodied, while I'm able-minded. I want to go on holidays, I want to go out for meals, I want to go out with friends, I want to buy nice things. So I'll save what I can. I won't spend loads on, say, for example, clothes or nice cars, but I want something that's functional, and I want to enjoy especially experiences with friends and family. So I'm sort of in the middle, and I don't generally want to retire. I've got no aims of retiring or never working again. I much prefer retiring in terms of the sense of maybe working part-time earlier on, so I can spend more time doing the things that I enjoy, making YouTube videos, being with friends, being with family, reading, exercising, whatever it might be, whatever sort of floats your boat, so to speak. I want to spend more time being able to do that rather than working. And that's why I want to work part-time as early as possible, and I want to invest my money so that allows me to do that. So with the FIRE approach, what they do is they'll invest all of their money as much as possible. Then at some point, when they reach a value that they've calculated is their retirement value, they'll start to live off the interest or the dividends that they make on the money that they have in their portfolio. So that's their plan. I plan to hopefully use that money maybe when I'm 50 or however old to be able to work part-time and spend more time with my family, friends, traveling, whatever it might be that I want to do at that age. I'm still happy at the moment working. For the people using the FIRE approach, I understand it, but tomorrow isn't guaranteed, and for me, I want to make sure that I'm living the best life that I can and doing everything that I enjoy while I'm alive, because 80, 90 years isn't a long time if I get to that. So I want to make sure that I'm not scrimping and saving and missing out on experiences and opportunities while young, and I'm going to look back when I'm older and go, wow, oh great, I've managed to retire early, but I could have done that, or I could have met that person, or I've done that. That's not where I want to be. I don't want to be living with regrets, essentially. But I also want to make sure that I am financially independent enough to be able to work part-time, and maybe if I hate a job or something goes completely wrong, I've got enough money to say, right, I can leave this job, take some time and find the right one for me. And Morgan talks about that in his book, The Psychology of Money. He talks about financial independence and financial freedom, I suppose, the power to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And I think that's something that can't be quantified. Having money set aside for that so that you have that security is something that's much more important than a nice house or a nice car. It is, well, at least to me anyway. My investment approach is actually something that Warren Buffett, I'm sure many of you will know, one of the most famous investors of all time, actually promotes. He said if he were to go back, actually I'll let him say it. Here's a video of Warren Buffett.
I recommend the S&P 500 index fund, and that for a long time to people. And I've never recommended Berkshire to anybody because I don't want people to buy it because they think I'm tipping them into some side. Never. I mean, no matter what it was selling for. And you know, I've made it public. On my death, there's a fund for my that then widow, and 90% will go into an S&P 500 index fund and 10% of Treasury bills.
Now, I don't just invest on the Vanguard platform and put all my money in the £200 a month and that's it. I make sure it's a stocks and shares ISA.
A stocks and shares ISA allows you to put £20,000 worth of money in each year, and you can take that money out tax-free. Whereas a normal account has a limit of £12,300 a year that can be realised in terms of your profits that are tax-free. Beyond that, you'd have to pay capital gains tax.
The average return for the S&P 500 over its lifetime of being created is around 8 to 10%. So that's a positive return in the sense of it's above inflation. For me, it's the safest thing I can do with my money to make sure that it gradually increases over my lifetime. Now, there isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It isn't invest this money in this stock and you'll fly to the moon. It takes time and it takes compounding interest. And this is something I want to explain and go through now, because it's something that I didn't understand or acknowledge when I started investing, and I've learned more about it, and it's the power of compounding is amazing. I know a lot of investors talk about just put your money in and let it compound, don't touch it. And I think that's something that really needs to be emphasized, is that it takes a lot of willpower to leave your money investing for a long period of time, because there might be times when you're stuck for cash, or there might be times the market's absolutely crashing and you're worried and panicking. You're like, I've lost £20,000. What do I do? Oh my God. But those are the times when you most need to be able to stay calm and let the process go. Again, this is spoken about in The Psychology of Money. I'll keep plugging that book because it's fantastic. So yeah, compound interest. Now I'm going to explain this using the graph that I've created. So I've based this graph off the amount of money that I put in each year. So each year I put in £200 a month, which is £2,400 a year. So what I've done is I've done £2,400, and in the first year I've done it times 1.08. Why have I done times 1.08? Because the average return of the S&P 500 is 8 to 10% over its lifetime. I've been conservative and gone for 8%, say, returns, and I've gone through and looked at year by year, based on this, how much money would essentially be in my portfolio over a certain span of time. As you can see on this graph, I've done from year 1 to year 30. So in year 1, for example, I have done £2,400 times 1.08, the 8% return, and I've received £2,592, so £192. And then over the years, as you can see, it gradually starts to go up on the graph, gradually starts to go up, and it gets steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper, because it's exponentially growing. And this is where a lot of people talk about you need money to make money, because once you get to, say, for example, year 22, I'll go to, it's taken 22 years for you to make just over £10,000 a year on your investment. So that's a huge amount of time. But the power of compound interest now shows itself, because in year 30, so just 8 years after year 22, you have made over £20,000 from your investments based on the average compounding. So it took 22 years to make £10,000 from your investments, and then just 8, less than half of that time, to make another £10,000 on top. That really shows the power of compounding and the need to have money to make money, but also the need to keep your money in the game for it to continue to grow. Now, just for fun, I wanted to show the power of compounding once you've got a lot of money in your account. And so I just had a look at year 35 where you'd be at. So in year 30, you'd be at £288,651 and 5p if you were to do my investing approach of putting in £2,400 a year. And in year 35, that 288,000 would now be £439,329.32. So just 5 years after making £20,000 from your investments, you'd actually now be making £32,000 a year. In 5 years, you'd have gone from £288,651 to £439,329. This is what I mean by exponential growth. 30 years investing, this would mean I'm now 54, and putting in £2,400 a year into a saving account would have left me with £72,000. So that's just putting into a savings account, which often has 0%. Putting this money instead, as I am planning to, into the S&P 500 with the average returns of 8% per year. Obviously that'll fluctuate, as I said, but the average returns being 8% per year. Rather than £72,000, I've now got £288,651 and 5p. So that's the power of compounding and the importance of leaving your money in there to just grow. The key thing is to stay in the game even when sort of your losses look quite large. So for example, this year you would have got a 30% return on your investments, but next year it might go down 40%, you might lose all your money, and then it will gradually build back up. But the average return is positive and it's 8 to 10%. It's so important to stay calm when investing passively and not to panic. It's easy to just keep checking how it's getting on. And the more you do that, the more likely you are that you might try and cash out at the wrong time. And a lot of people might cash out or have to cash out because they put too much money in when the market's at its lowest. And then as it starts to go back up, they might buy back in again. And you've essentially realized a lot of loss there because you cashed out low and bought in high, which of course the main aim is to buy low, cash out high. This is also exclude any dividends that you could make from, because some companies pay dividends, some pay more than others. Dividends essentially is the money that the company will pay shareholders for essentially just holding the share and investing in the company. But this is just based off the £200 a month, which I think for a lot of families, a lot of people is really difficult. But for the average sort of salary, the £26,000 to £30,000 a year salary, it is achievable, it is possible, and I think people could do this and be far better off in the future because of it. But as you can see from the graph, this isn't a get rich quick scheme. This takes time. It takes time for your money to compound, takes time and also patience and calmness when the market is crashing to leave you and keep your money in there. Now, a little warning, when you do come to take your money out at whatever age that is, the market might have crashed, in which case it makes it incredibly difficult to realize any returns because you've lost them all. Because, I don't know, for example, you might have been saving since 1985 and then you come to 2008 and you're like, right, I'm ready to realize my returns, and then there's a crash. Now, this is difficult because it means that you might have to push back, well, you will have to push back the date that you realize any returns until the market sort of recovers. But it's part of the game, really. It comes with the risk. When you come to realize your returns, that's the difficulty. Generally, the main sort of points I want to take away from this is the importance of diversification and index funds in allowing that, specifically for me, the S&P 500. The importance of the adaptability of index funds as well, S&P 500, because you're not just invested in a certain sector. So you can sort of adapt to a change in market. So for example, years ago, manufacturing might have been a very important sector to invest in. And if you just kept your money in the S&P 500, even though then manufacturing might have been a big part of the S&P 500, now it's much smaller and tech's much bigger. You haven't had to touch it, but it's invested your money in a way that the top 500 companies are now steered towards the tech industry as that's grown, and you don't have to touch it. Also, one thing I want you to take away is the power of compounding interest. That's something that's really key. I hope you take away from this video is that keeping your money in an index fund for a long period of time, so that as the stock market ebbs and flows, you can know that generally the stock market goes up. Hope that I've explained that okay. I'm going to go through this now and edit it and try and make it sound a bit better if it didn't. But I would encourage you all to look at videos from Ali Abdaal, Investing for Beginners. Massively suggest you guys reading the book Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, because that's where some of the advice that I've given and a lot of the information is from. Obviously, go away and do your own research. This is just what I do with my money. Now this is for you to go away. It was quite eye-opening for me to learn more about this type of stuff, and I hope it's been helpful for you. But yeah, go out now onto YouTube, into books, onto the internet, and have more of a research and actually take action. The best time to invest was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but the second best time is now. So go out, do your research and decide how you want to spend your money, because I think a lot of this education around investing isn't out there enough, it's not understood enough, and you need to sort of take it into your own hands, and it's up to you to take what you want from it. But yeah, thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and I'll speak to you guys soon.